On Thursday of this week, one or two of you were there. There was a regional conference around governance that took place in Wakefield, and we were lucky enough to have Russell Hobby speak at that conference. He's the General Secretary of the National Association of Head Teachers, and in a very kind of professional way, without slides or anything, he spoke for an hour about the educational landscape. And I'll share with you now, on the back of what Joe was saying, some of Russell's ponderings, which I've got in soundbite form. He said, fairly near the beginning of his presentation, that every prudent school leader will be seeking collaboration in the next few years. I think this is absolutely true. I think it's always been true, but never more so than now. It doesn't matter what kind of school you are, whether you're part of a multi-academy trust, an academy, a maintained school, a federation or whatever. I think you have to keep your eye on the horizon, and you have to keep considering different models of collaboration and looking outwards. And I think, certainly in my experience of governance, historically it's always been a rather introspective existence. We haven't often looked outwards. We haven't naturally looked beyond our own schools, particularly historically, but I think now that there's a really strong case for that. The other thing he said, I think this also depends where you are at, but he also said the immediate need for panic around academisation seems to be withdrawing. I think that really does depend a little bit on the circumstances of your individual school. But he cited the example of a head teacher he knows, who an executive head of a number of schools, receiving 30 phone calls in a week from schools seeking to collaborate and join with him, which does feel a little bit knee-jerk and panic-stricken. Another nice soundbite: there aren't any silver bullets in education other than consistent great teaching. That's something I don't think any of us would disagree with. He also had a nice turn of phrase where he mentioned what he calls the art of strategic procrastination. Don't underestimate the power of waiting and considering and not jumping straight in with things. I think there's something in that for governors as well. Let's exercise a bit of strategic procrastination where appropriate, so that we take very well considered, thought through decisions and approaches. He also said, and this is a concern, he used the word being rocked. He said, "I've been rocked by the self-inflicted wound of the growing scale of financial mismanagement in schools." And, you know, I've seen things in the press, as I'm sure you have, around schools and not managing their finances appropriately, employment approaches, things that maybe there's more opportunity for that now, but I think it sits upon the shoulders of governors ever more heavily, the responsibility around monitoring our budgets and finances. So I think that's important. He cited how important it was that governors provide that constructive, fair and well-meaning challenge, and that governors should not shy away from the difficult conversation. He also talked about collaborations and groups of schools, and he said there's a tension here. He says he said that probably the ideal size for a group of schools collaborating together in terms of school improvement would probably be somewhere between 6 and 12 schools gathering together in a group in terms of school improvement. But then there's a tension because that's not enough to yield the financial and economic benefits that could be found in larger collaborations. So how that works, I don't really know. But he didn't clearly articulate, but he mentioned how we're probably heading for a landscape where we've got lots of overlapping and interlocking sets of collaborations, where you'll be grouped with some schools for one thing and grouped with other schools for another thing. And I think that's already the case here in Kirklees, and it's definitely the case for schools across the country, that these relationships and these collaborations will be ever more complex, but nevertheless there are huge benefits to be had from it. Now, Joe mentioned that we ran a special network session a month or so ago for governors to talk to each other. I honestly think in conferences the best bit is when you talk to other people, and I really don't think we get enough opportunity to talk to other people about our situations, our challenges and our problems. So I don't apologise for repeating a similar activity today. There will be those that were at the Governor Network, and I recognise some faces who sat in the room, which will be a room when they pull the barrier across, and discussed the challenges facing their school. We might think, oh, we've done that already. Well, I don't think we can overdo that, because you might be in a different situation now than you were in October. You might have had an inspection. Your governors might have met and talked about some interesting things that have moved your thinking to a different place. Or maybe you weren't there at all. But when we were there, we talked about some very interesting things. We talked about the key priorities, the key things that are exercising governance in schools at the moment. Some of that is around structural change and challenges around that, but it might be other things. And I want to give you the opportunity now for half an hour or so to talk to other governors, because we don't get enough of an opportunity to do that. So I'm going to invite you to talk to each other about the things that are exercising you at your school or academy or in amongst your trust at the moment. And it might be a little bit around you articulating to others some of your horizon scanning thinking that you've been doing over recent months. So I don't apologise, because I think it's a good thing to do. And does everyone think they can behave themselves? Sorry, it's the primary school teacher in me then. But I'm going to ask you to try and stay on task and spend a little while on your tables. If you think, whilst you're doing it, there's something that is a burning question that your table or that you might want considered today, we do have representation later on from an organisation called Brown Jacobson, who specialise in facilitating school collaborations. If you feel that you might want some expert advice on that, pop it on a post-it note and bring it to our attention by popping it on the table at the front, and we'll see if we can address that. I have also spoken to Brown Jacobson on the back of the meeting we had a month ago with some of your questions and thoughts, so I hope they'll be answering some of those later anyway. Right, off you go, talk to each other, be good, thank you.
Right.